Hello, Feuzion. My name is Alex Fuse, the host of Feuzion News, and we have another big show for you right now. I'm on the phone with Ian Rapoport, NFL Network insider. So, Ian, if the NFL disappeared and no one remembered what the NFL was, and you had to cover one major sport, what sport would you choose to cover?
I've always been a big baseball guy. Grew up playing baseball, and I'm one of those guys who can probably stop and watch a random, amateur baseball game wherever I am. I always kind of gravitate to that. I like being a fan now. I'm a Mets fan, and they're terrible, which is very upsetting. But so I have no desire to cover baseball now because I think that would probably take away from my fandom. But if football disappeared, I would say covering baseball, as long as I didn't have to travel for 150 nights a year, I would think that would probably be my next landing spot, hopefully.
And then maybe if you were, covering an MLB team, maybe then if the NFL disappeared, you would be covering Kyler Murray at this time.
Yeah, well, I think what's so interesting about Kyler and baseball, about this process is, obviously he's a great athlete, and I would say probably is on his way to being a really good football player, although it's very tough to tell. If he was, if he ended up as a baseball player, even though he played in college, even though he's kind of got to step up in a lot of people in the minor leagues, he's probably not going to be in the majors or, any place visible for 2 or 3 or 5 years, if at all. And that's one crazy thing about this is I know a lot of people, especially a lot of the scouts and general managers I talked to, a lot of people were sort of curious, at least, about his decision to give up baseball. But a lot of it is in football, you've made it when you get drafted. In baseball, you may not. And that is a huge, huge F.
How competitive do you think the competition between Kyler Murray and Brett Hundley is going to be this upcoming year?
Oh, I mean, they may call. I don't even know if they'll call it a competition. I mean, I think what it's basically going to be is if Kyler looks and feels ready, and by all accounts, from what I was told in OTAs, in minicamp, he was fantastic. He was everything they thought he would be. I would be beyond stunned if anybody but Kyler Murray ended up starting. And he's going to be playing in an offense that's specifically tailored to him, almost created for a guy like him. He's going to be their quarterback now, and then probably, hopefully, for the next 10 years after that.
You covered Nick Saban and then Bill Belichick. What was probably the difficult parts of covering two of the, toughest NFL or in football coaches of a football's lifetime in the past, 50 years?
It was definitely difficult. Very, very different. I mean, they're the same in the fact that, both of them like to limit the information that gets out in the public. Both of them would rather their assistants did not talk to the media. And in fact, Nick Saban still doesn't really let assistants talk to the media except for a couple very specific times. And I'm sure he's not even happy about that. Belichick, obviously, and, famously, drastically limits how much his players actually say to the media. And if they say too much, he makes sure to very kindly remind them that that's not exactly what they're supposed to be doing in the nicest way possible, of course. But, they're also very different in the way they conduct things. Bill Belichick, first of all, they're both geniuses, both brilliant. So they're always going to win. And, the reality of this is when you're covering a winning team, even though no one likes to admit this, when you're covering a winning team, more people read your stuff. More people pay attention. There's more eyeballs on everything. So it's actually better for a reporter if you cover a winning team. So even though they can be frustrating to deal with, there's always that. The other thing is, Bill Belichick is probably the most disciplined media person I've ever come across. You will never get him to say anything he doesn't want to say. It is not going to happen. So, when I was covering the Patriots, you'd ask about, an injury. I could ask, but if he didn't want to say anything, he was not going to say anything. Nick Saban, you can sort of lead one way and kind of goad into saying things maybe he doesn't want to say, and he can kind of fly off the handle a little bit, and you get a good soundbite.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's probably the difference. The other thing is, away from football, both these guys are pretty good guys and actually really, really funny. Belichick especially, very funny when you get him away from football.
What's your funniest Bill Belichick story?
My funniest Bill Belichick story. I would say, oh man, I'll give you a funny Nick Saban story instead.
Okay, yeah.
I mean, there's some good Belichick stories that I would sort of rather not get into because I still cover him. But my Nick Saban story was this. So I'll actually give you two of them. So I was covering Alabama, and I was reporting on a lot of stuff that, he didn't really like. NCAA violations, and I was making Freedom of Information Act requests, and I was, whenever they had a player arrested, and I think they had a bunch early on, especially as he was trying to kind of clean out the, players who really weren't his kind of guys. He had a bunch of arrests, and so I would always sit in the front of the press conference, ask all the questions. He and I battled a lot. And, I think the first time, I covered him 2 years. The second year, we really understood each other pretty good. First year, we butted heads a lot. And I'll never forget getting called to his office for him to yell at me. And, you get into the office, and then the door closes behind you automatically. And I'm not intimidated by very much, but when you get called into his office for him to yell at you, the door closes automatically, and you're like, you know what? Whatever happens here, I'm not getting out. That was kind of a funny thing and a little bit scary. Now, again, we ended up kind of making up and at least coming to an understanding of how we're going to do things. But I think that was kind of funny initially. The other thing was, as I was leaving, I pulled him aside at the SEC media days as I was leaving from Alabama to come cover the Patriots for the Boston Herald. And, I say, hey, by the way, I'm leaving. Thanks for everything. It's been interesting getting to know you. I'm going to cover, Belichick and the Patriots. And I'm like, look, you don't have to do anything. I was like, but if you wanted to tell Belichick that, I'm an okay guy and, work hard and whatever, that would be appreciated. And he looks at me and he goes, you want me to call my best friend in the world and effing lie to him? And obviously he didn't say effing. And I was like, and then I kind of stopped for a second, and then he started hysterically laughing, and I'm like, all right, okay, I think this will be fine. And, I don't know that he ever called, but I laugh whenever I think about it.
That's a good story. And now you bring up the Patriots, covering them with the Boston Herald. How much will Tom Brady miss Gronk this upcoming season?
He's a good player. He's a very, very good player. The kind of player you can't replace. But what's crazy about the Patriots is that they're not going to replace him. They're not going to try to replace him. So I think everyone kind of focuses their energy on, which tight end is it going to be? Who's going to end up taking Gronk's place? They don't work like that. The way they work is, okay, well, you don't have Gronk. Well, which other players are going to step in, and how are we going to retool the offense to kind of make it about other guys? And, they've played without Gronk plenty. They won a Super Bowl without Gronk. I believe it was the ACL. So, they're going to put other guys in position to succeed and figure it out. He's great, and so I think it's gonna hurt. But if literally any team could figure out how to play without one of the greatest players in the game's history, it's the Patriots, no doubt about it.
Well, Ian, this is my favorite segment in the show. It's 5 quick questions, so I call it the Fast 5 quick round. So first question, favorite NFL stadium.
Hold on. Now, how quick do you want them to be? Like one-word answers? Real quick?
It depends on, you can elaborate if you want, but again, it's kind of up to you. You have however long to answer a question.
All right.
So favorite NFL stadium.
Favorite NFL stadium. Shoot.
It's a tough one.
I loved Arrowhead. I thought I was there for the for the playoff game against the Ravens, I believe. They ended up losing, I think. It was loud and crazy and red. I like that one.
If you could spend an entire lunch with someone in the sports world and talk with them off the record, and that just after lunch, that just is the end of it, who would you choose?
Oh man, that's a hard one too. Oh man,
You can ask them any questions.
These are hard, man. Shoot. What's interesting is like there's not. I mean, I think in the football world, most of the guys I've met and I'm not generally curious about because a lot of times you sort of know. God, that's a really tough one. Maybe Tiger.
Okay.
Especially if it was real off the record. I think there'd be some things I'd like to get to the bottom of if he would actually open up. I think Tiger's probably. I mean, I'm a big golfer. I'm not a big anything, but I do play golf a lot. So I think Tiger would probably be my answer there. But that's a hard one.
If you could teach one college class, what class would he teach?
I would probably teach. I would say like maybe Depression era U.S. history.
Because you were a history major, right?
I was. Yeah, and maybe the early 1900s to the Depression would probably be fun. Civil War history, I love. That would be a course I'd like to. I'd kind of like to teach. Yeah, I think that would be kind of my wheelhouse there.
What's your go-to snack while covering a major story when you're up all hours of the night?
I'm fundamentally opposed to snacking, except if it's after 10:30 at night. So I would say probably popcorn.
Okay.
That's like the only thing I ever snack on is popcorn. During the day, I'm against it, so you'll never catch me snacking. Also, no napping. But after 10:30, just popcorn.
And this is going to be a tough one. So this is the last one. If you could go into the future in this upcoming football season and look at a potential story that you might be covering, what do you think you'll be covering this upcoming season?
The Kyler Murray thing we hit on. I think that's obviously going to be a big one. The Packers and Aaron Rodgers, based on a lot of the stuff that's come out about how they're trying to get on the same page, how much freedom he's going to have, him kind of saying to my friend Mike Silver that, shouldn't you allow me to, create at the line? I mean, I think how the Packers work together is going to be an extremely relevant storyline. A lot of the other things that we've talked about in the offseason, like the Jets, for instance, like if they look better, a lot of the storylines are going to kind of dissipate. To me, I would say the Packers and how LaFleur and Rodgers work together is going to be one of the things that carries us. I would say the only other one to me that jumps out like that is the Cowboys and how they relate to Jason Garrett's future.
Last question for you here, Ian, on this interview. If a teenager came up to you and asked you for life advice to get into the career of sports reporting and to be an NFL insider, what advice would you give them?
I would say, first of all, stay away. I don't need any competition until I get ready to retire. But the main thing so no more insiders. I'm good there. But as far as just being like an NFL reporter or, let's say a newspaper reporter, the main thing is just focus on telling people something they don't know. So much of the emphasis now is on, sort of hot takes and columns, and every young writer wants to start a blog. Every young writer, was a columnist in college and got to opine on, the NBA or the NFL or baseball or pro golf or whatever. And so everyone sort of has an opinion, and unless you've really experienced life, I would say that opinion is not worth a ton because there's just a lot of them. The main thing is focus on the reporting aspect and tell people something they don't know. And if you can do that, if you can help enlighten, if you can help teach the world something that they were not aware of, whether that's on, like a political world, it's on corruption or finances or how your money is really going or where your money is really going or, whatever it is. In football, it's breaking news. It's tell people something they don't know. And I think if you can do that, then you will find a job anywhere in any medium. That should be the big thing. I think the only other thing that comes to mind is be willing to move. One of the best things I ever did in life was move from New York, where I grew up and where I wanted to be for the rest of my life, to Starkville, Mississippi, because it was a good job. It was a great job covering Mississippi State for the Clarion Ledger, covering an SEC team when I wasn't really qualified to do it. Being willing to move was one of the best things in my life that I ever did. And so I would say those two things: tell people something they don't know, and be willing to go anywhere for the job, and you will probably end up okay.
Well, thank you again, Ian, for coming on today's show. And where can the Fuse Nation follow you on Twitter? And the NFL season's just around the corner. I know it probably doesn't feel like that for some NFL fans that have been longing for the NFL to come back, but we're just a couple weeks away, seems like it. And so where can they follow you on Twitter and then also listen to your podcast?
They can follow me at Rapsheet on Twitter. Usually, hopefully not that active right now, but once football starts, pretty active, and I think that'd be one place. And then they can get Rapsheet and Friends podcast anywhere podcasts are available. It's always fun, and you can hear my two co-hosts, Mike Garofalo and Tom Pelissero, make fun of me, which always is exciting.
Well, perfect. Thank you again, Ian, for coming on today. Greatly appreciate it.
All right, man. Enjoy it. Take care.
All right, Fuse Nation, you just heard it from the one and only Ian Rapoport, NFL Inside Reporter for NFL.com. Once again, Fuse Nation, thanks again for listening. I'll be back here live with you tomorrow interviewing Billy Bean, who's an a special assistant to the general manager and commissioner of Major League Baseball. So once again, thank you for listening. I will be seeing you tomorrow. And be sure to follow me on Twitter at AlexFuse and subscribe to this YouTube channel. Thank you again, and I'll be seeing you tomorrow.